really felt like, man, I don't think people really need another version of just that movie as that story, that structure as it was. Really felt like, boy, it'd be nice to have something refreshing and new in the franchise, but then also in science fiction movies in general. We've always fallen in love with the sidekick, walking carpet Chewbacca, or the villainous monster, and they've never been the main character of the movie. So really loved the idea of being like, yeah, we're gonna make a movie where the Predator is the main character and he's going to be ferocious and badass. And then he's gonna meet this other cast of characters and there's gonna be a soul to the movie. Like, we're actually gonna be both. It's gonna be brutal, filled with spine rips and beheadings and limbs coming off, and also have some heart and make you feel things. That way it can be a full meal.
Okay. Oh. That is hideous.
That's right. Dan Trachtenberg felt that the best way to reinvent the wheel for the Predator franchise was to make it a copy and paste of various late-stage Disney releases. Specifically recycling a script from The Mandalorian with an even uglier Grogu sidekick, a Weyland-Yutani android that is just a legless Disney princess, and a Yautja so underwhelming in appearance that you'll be wondering if he has Down syndrome. This is his idea of something fresh. Please, for the love of all that is good, fire Dan Tractenberg. This dude fundamentally doesn't understand the Predator franchise. Wait, let me correct that statement because there's nothing to understand about the Predator.
They're trying to snap up all of our best DNA before we're gone.
I detect one among you who is a true warrior, the one called Genna. He will be your leader. He will be my prize.
He said he wanted me?
No, he said he wanted McKenna. The next step in the evolutionary chain. Not you, your son.
By the way, old Danny Boy thought that Tard Fest was gonna spawn a trilogy. We're already off to a start, huh? Set in the distant future, a malformed Yautja named Dek, presumably short form for a downright embarrassing knucklehead. I mean, just look at this dude. He's not only pint-sized, but looks like his mother had a little issue with drinking and popping Tylenols during her pregnancy. After all, in her defense, what's the worst that could happen to her second-born when her firstborn looks like this?
Whoa, hey, hold on, wait, hold on! What the f*** is that? That's what I said!
Dek, I'm gonna help you out and give you a slightly less idiotic name. Derek. The opening fight scene off the bat, unless you're missing half a brain, is not only nothing new, but an absolute mess. The choreography mimics a lot of what we've seen superheroes do throughout the Marvel franchise, and the entire sequence is CGI'd. Which means on a giant screen, this is more of a blurry mess of poor FX fluidity than a strong cinematic scene meant to establish Yautja's strength, nature, and Derek's goals. It does a pretty shite job of all of those with the muffled lightsaber noises attached to the energy blades, the thermal vision that's meant to fine-tune a Yautja's natural vision never showing up again after this shot, and a display of action that makes Yautja training seem like it's simply a development of weapons mastery than of brute strength and cunning. And that's not something in the extended lore, that's in the movies. Anyways, Derek is such a massive disappointment in every way that his pops asks his brother Quay to kill him. Why does he ask Quay instead of doing it himself? Fuck if I know. If you aren't aware of Predator lore, let me give you a quick history lesson in how Yautja culture works. The Yautjas are humanoid alien creatures from a planet called Yautja Prime. Their culture is based off an honor code. There are two ways you can categorize a Yautja without getting into the nitty-gritty of elders or elites or boobs. First, the unblooded, physically mature young adults that have yet to complete their basic training. And two, blooded. These Yautjas have successfully completed their first hunt, which can include xenomorphs. This Yautja now has an established rank in his clan and is able to bow chicka-wow-wow with female Yautjas. There's also a middle class in their young bloods, but that doesn't really apply to all Yautja culture. So given how Yautja are typically categorized, killing off your own children isn't really in the books here, which makes these Yautjas, for all intensive purposes, bad bloods. Basically Yautjas that don't adhere to societal standards. They've broken the rules within the Yautja code and are more violent in nature, particularly to their own kind. We caught a glimpse of this in 2010's Predators, which, if you ask me, is the second best Predator movie.
He's out of line, but he's right.
This also isn't new information. In fact, you can just Google this. You can find pretty straightforward answers about how Yautja culture and society is structured. But poor Dan, he's so busy making a shitty film with pastels that he couldn't even do that. So he just fucking headcanons all of this. Badlands doesn't do a good job at establishing the backstory, and it doesn't need to do a lot of heavy lifting to necessarily do that. That's inherently what makes 1987's Predator such a strongly written film. You don't need exposition dumps to explain why Billy had a sixth sense, or why the bond of brotherhood was so strong between Blaine and Duke, or why the Predator, once engaged with Dutch at the end of the film, sought to fight Dutch as an equal, honorably. Badlands chooses to work against the comprehensive lore out there to create a Yautja society that contradicts everything we've seen prior to Dan's takeover of the franchise. We saw this throughout 2022's Prey, where the Yautja skill is consistently undermined in order for Naru to complete her rite of passage. Don't even get me started on why that doesn't work either. Like, bro, how the fuck do you make the Comanches? The Comanches absolute pussies. We also saw it throughout every story in Predator Killer of Killers earlier this year. A grandma with crumbling bone density issues taking on a literal Hulk of a Yautja, a samurai warrior Yautja who forgets how stealth works midway into a battle, and a disabled Yautja who kills a bunch of pilots and targets an aspiring bean for no bloody reason. Anyways, since all we got was the equivalent of a modern Disney Star Wars and Phase 5 Marvel cutscene to establish brotherhood and emotion and the importance of family, when Quay sacrifices himself to save Derek from their father, Jimmy, is that you? The emotional weight of the scene is not only all but missing thanks to how horrendously long it's dragged out, but because it completely undermines the Yautja as one of cinema's most tactile, fearsome antagonists. This, at its core, is why Predator, to a lesser extent Predator 2, and even parts of Predators work so well. The simplicity of essentially trophy hunting to prove one's worth becomes identifiable very quickly with just body language. Covered body language. No human emotions, no family drama, just power through simplicity and some cool-ass action. Despite some very glaring continuity errors through this entire scene. Quay manages to launch the ship while his innards are spilling out, and Derek is thrust into outer space travel so suddenly that Dan Tractenberg thought it would be impactful to show Derek being thrown by the force of it. Due to copyright issues, here's what it best looks like. And thus begins the hero's journey for our very ugly, unlikable, and genetically delayed protagonist. Gosh, I kind of hate labeling it like that because it doesn't even really do a great version of the hero's journey. It's really just the heroine's journey as taught by a female robot to a low-T bitch. Derek gets knocked out and awakens when he enters the orbit of Genna, the death planet, where the Kalisk lives, an unkillable creature that Derek chose as his first hunt to prove his worth. His ship gets blasted by rocks and he somehow survives by getting evacuated out into a hollow metal donut, and survives crash landing onto this planet without any armor and without acquiring a single scratch. Now, despite his ship being basically lost in the upper atmosphere, and Derek not knowing where it lands, and Derek hastily performing an emergency evacuation, he still manages to end up with enough weaponry to help him face off against a monster that's sure to get the creators over at Rule 34 painfully aroused. I gotta say, despite this being one of the many clips that was released for promotional reasons, even with context, it's f***ing stupid. This is a deadly planet, and this tree tentacle monster is just sending one tentacle at a time towards this denthead with a lightsaber. Derek legitimately should have died 30 seconds into this entire scene, but we gotta make sure he survives, right? To give the disabled hope that they too can become an effeminate fighter one day, as long as their unavoidable depression and the microplastics don't get them first. After this lackluster fight, establishes the threat level on Genna, which looks suspiciously like Yautja Prime except with dune worm penises hanging off the underside of cliffs. Derek begins to walk around and encounters the half-massacred android corpse of Thia, a Weyland-Yutani synthetic that was sent to Genna to study and procure wildlife on the behalf of the humans that created them, since they're more able to deal with the harsh conditions of this foreign planet. Now, all of us have seen an alien movie at this point, regardless of how messy the entire timeline has become thanks to Ridley Scott's black jism and homoerotic Fassbender droids. There's one thing that the alien films have always kept consistent: the nature and personalities of its commissioned synthetics. They're neutral, stoic, and virtually emotionless in the ways that we as living creatures otherwise identify emotion. Even David Eight kept this composure for most of his appearances and was arguably the highlight of that would-be trilogy.
What'd you say?
But since Dan doesn't know what the fuck he's doing and is basically just bringing his weird Tumblr fanfic to the big screen, Thia is a quirky Disney princess. She laughs, she appreciates nature, she's unabashedly curious, and she makes lots of human jokes that a Yautja from a completely different planet and lifestyle wouldn't at all understand.
Catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Thia is such a capable synth that she's able to take down a flying beast that's like 10 times her size, but can't free herself from a few vines without a Beyblade. Don't fret though, dear viewer, for this isn't the last time this film completely chooses to play around with synth strength. Thia explains that she got separated from her sister, Tessa, another synth, who decided to take her into the field one day where they encountered the Kalisk. Thia was torn in half at the waist and lost sight of her sister about 13 days ago. And in those 13 days, she was able to learn so much about every single thing on Genna, even the things she wouldn't have had any chance to encounter because she'd been basically stuck in a nest for all of those 13 days. Employing conning tactics that all women are biologically wired to have, she convinces Derek to take her with him because she knows where the Kalisk is, and that despite his code to hunt alone and trained ability to actually track things as indicated by every Predator movie, he can use her as a tool. Take that however you want, because the film not so subtly teases that these two could bone in some future installment. Nothing like chafing your alien dick on a plastic synthol, eh fellas? Since Thia is oh so quirky, she won't shut her trap for more than a few seconds, thus giving Dan Tractenberg the perfect opportunity to transition between story beats with a montage of the pair traversing Genna's landscape, in an effort to establish a bond without having to do the work to actually do that. Because that's exactly what a Predator movie needs. A tarred-looking Yautja with a female sidekick that's as perky and annoying as those disgusting fat chicks you see touting what they eat in a day as a fat girl. It's dumb, it's hockey, and it employs the same kind of humor Marvel films initially cleverly capitalized on, then drove straight into the ground by using as a replacement for actual character work. Eventually, Derek's hanger gets the best of him, I guess, and he decides to hunt some huge bison thing, simply because it's what the Kalisk eats. Fuck if it's deadly or poisonous to him, because he's already demonstrated his lack of aptitude for basic observation skills. Maybe his father was right for wanting to kill him. Just as he's about to figure out a way to get across this field of actual blades, he encounters a monkey, a predator Grogu, who can basically do and embodies everything Derek doesn't have. Hard skin, high-speed mobility, climbing skills, and a face that's, well, they're definitely in league in the fugly department. To make it that much worse, this Grogu basically bests Derek in hand-to-hand combat before it saves him and then goes after the alien bison to eat himself. Amidst a very poorly replicated Twilight tree jumping scene, the winsome, hey, I learned that word from all the early reviews that glazed this movie. The tension between Predator Grogu and Derek is used to very poorly push Derek's arc past, I just need to prove my worth to my father. Predator Grogu is willing to help weaker potential allies under the guise of playful competition, is seeking companionship, and following the takedown of the alien bison, marks Derek as family by spitting on him. A funny, gross marking scene that only reminded me of this.
You gotta give him that hawk too and
Spit on that thing!
This is at least what I suspect the sequence is trying to do, but fails miserably at, and it becomes more and more obvious over the bulk of the next hour, as we watch our main characters just encounter various CGI monsters and landscapes that lack originality, uniqueness, and cosmic gravity. As much as the opinion varies on Predators, I think the film can be given a little bit of credit for its environment. Despite it being shot almost entirely in Hawaii, the landscape is morphed by the subtle hint that it's a hunting planet meant to mimic the geography of the Yautja's prey's homeworlds. Derek abandons Predator Grogu pretty quickly, a poor allusion to him trying to push away the humanity a bootyless robot is trying to teach him, but not before the quirkiest, funniest scene to ever happen to a Predator. As they continue tracking the Kalisk, Thia becomes a little too human, harping on Derek about leaving Buddy behind, the Predator Grogu that they named, probing him as to why his brother died and how he got here. Because that's exactly what a Yautja warrior needs, a sympathetic female perspective. Quickly arriving at the Weyland-Yutani scientific outpost trashed by the Kalisk attack Thia had described upon meeting Derek, she reveals that her sister Tessa is on the way, as now that she's reunited with her legs, she can be tracked and send signals? Remember this because the film forgets this little plot element as well. And what has dearest Tessa been up to? Being just a default evil robot who coincidentally has found Derek's crashed ship and looted it of its weapons. Not because it makes any sense, but because like every other formulaic Disney release of the last several years, there needs to be an external villain to drive stakes. What stakes? Not the ones through our eyes at this effeminate garbage, unfortunately. Derek decides to set off an explosion to attract the Kalisk, and this fight is so generic that it can best be described as, what if the T-1000 was a generic Monster Hunter ripoff? As Derek gets his ass tossed harder than a salad at a San Francisco rave, Thia's trying to glue herself back together and fails only for comedic relief. Eventually Tessa shows up and throws an ice grenade that she coincidentally set off by accident when she looted Derek's ship. And the ice grenade freezes Derek, along with the Kalisk during the fight. Derek not only immediately thaws out without any nerve damage after this scene, but the Kalisk, which could previously tear through about anything, and later does, cannot get out of this tiny metal box. Thia gets captured as well, and in the following scene we get a villain confrontation moment that, again, just functionally doesn't make sense.
I read Thia's logs. You never told her why your brother protected you. That's correct. And you are now property of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. It is a great honor for you.
A few moments later.
You were right about the Kalisk. The creature is a regenerative miracle. Humanity will thank us.
10 seconds later.
Tessa is programmed to simply retrieve samples. That inherently has no underlying motive. The robot is programmed to do a task and therefore it will do it, regardless of the moral and ethical complications around said task. But since this film so desperately needs its villain, it tries to reinforce Tessa as an evil akin to David 8, which in those films only worked because we watched David progress throughout his malfunctioning sentience into something that doesn't quite fit the label of human or synthetic. And just a reminder, apparently Yautja are immune and impervious to things that would normally kill living creatures, like getting thoroughly frozen solid and traveling at deadly speeds through the atmosphere without gear, but tree tentacles can scratch it. Despite Derek being the ideal candidate for a late-term abortion, apparently now that synths can just do whatever they want, they now have the ability to tell Mother what to do when it comes to mission objectives. So Tessa decides that having a tarred Yautja for the company is just as valuable as the Kalisk. Think about that. A giant creature that can regenerate any body part is as valuable as a Yautja with galactic Down syndrome. Thia, I guess, manifests like the power of love or some shit, and Derek manages to get away. And despite us watching them walk across this planet for about 2 days, Derek manages to not only find the spaceship he couldn't find before, but gets back there in like an hour after he escapes. But the script tries hard to make you forget geography and logic exist here, for the sake of giving our pint-sized hero a moment to realize that the family he had, the culture that gave him purpose, doesn't really matter. Because an android missing her luscious lower half taught him the importance of making your own family. I understand we're in the bastardization of IPs era right now, but holy fuck, Dan, what are we even doing here? Why are we applying the Guardians of the Galaxy formula to a fucking Predator movie? Have we watched the same movies? What dicks did you suck to be put in charge of this franchise? I'm genuinely curious because at this point, I'm willing to get Harvey Weinstein to save this IP from the clutches of a talentless hack who looks like he fucks jars of moldy peanut butter in his spare time.
Bang! That was easy.
Anyways, we get a quick montage of Derek reuniting with his predator Grogu, who is actually a Kalisk baby, and embracing the nature of Genna to create weapons since all his stuff was looted by Tessa earlier in the film. This movie really wants to hammer home that Derek is finally coming to terms with what he really needs thanks to a robot, and that he now has a sense of individuality, cause that's what every Yautja in a Predator film in the last 40 years has been searching for. Well, aside from autism, apparently. Danny Boy equally uses this montage to pay the worst of homages to Dutch's battle preparation in the final act of the 1987 original. But aside from poor mimicry, it doesn't quite hit the same. The reason it worked so well for Dutch is because we learned at the very beginning of that film what a rough and tough fighter he was, giving up the opportunity to work in an office like Dylan did, to continue fighting out on the battlefield for the country he pledged allegiance to. It's a subtle character trait in the Hollywood action heroes of that time that their personalities and skill reflect that of a post-Vietnam America still reckoning with Cold War tensions and the incoming imminence of the Reagan era. As the film progresses, we understand more of not just his military background, but who he is as a person, what he values, the importance he gives to brotherhood, and his cunning when it comes to battle tactics and stealth. By the time we witness the final confrontation with the Predator, Dutch has transformed and been forced to strip down to his most primal instincts, not just to overcome his greatest adversarial challenge, but to complete his own hero's journey, which sees him return to civilization as a scarred victor who's now seen the spoils of a new, more terrifying war. Derek recruiting cum-spitting worms with berries and using blades of grass to form spears like he's a fat girl pretending to be Pocahontas doesn't quite hit the same when we've never really established much of anything for his purpose aside from, my dad tried to kill me because I'm deformed and so stupid. It's made infinitely worse by the fact that Derek is, for the plot's sake, indestructible. So he never truly faces or confronts anything that would actually threaten him. His brother, supposedly a blooded superior fighter, couldn't kill him. Space crashes couldn't scratch him. Monsters made intentionally stupid can't kill him. And even a team of synths seen to have superior strength can't detain him. If the hero on your hero's journey doesn't actually encounter anything that threatens him, then he has nothing to overcome and no journey to go on. Emotional journeys to overcome your daddy issues and find your true identity are things more associated with a heroine's journey. And given that the target demographic for this franchise is male, feminizing an antagonist that represents challenges to the male hero complex alienates the viewer base that would have happily paid to see this on the big screen. This, at its core, is why Dan Tractenberg is not suited to run the franchise, because he's a low-T nigga.
What'd you say?
To keep the action intense, we see a bunch of androids get slaughtered by Derek using his colors of the wind to blow them up, which the number of synths on this planet seems to fluctuate between scenes, because we see hundreds here and then only like 30 to 40 here and the rest fuck off, I guess. The only continuity Dan Trachtenberg loves is the lack thereof it. But wait, the best part of the film is about to happen. So you know how Thia has been bottomless this entire time when we all wished she wasn't? Well, it turns out now her legs can function separate from her body. And cue the greatest action sequence of the 21st century. John Wick has nothing on Thia. This is what Dan Tractenberg believes will keep this IP fresh. This is what he believes we want to see. This is his vision for a Predator universe.
I'll stick a GoPro up your ass so you can see how shit you are. Got it?
The final act for this film really just drags out for the sake of fitting all of Dan's franchise butchering. Since the formula dictates it, Derek needs to face off against Tessa, who's just gone rogue now for reasons. And she's in a thing, you guys. You know, the thing from Alien? Like Ripley! Thia, in the meantime, with the help of Predator Grogu / Baby Kalisk, releases Mama Kalisk, and she joins in for a massive CGI fight that is as dark as it is unoriginal. And just when you think the fight is over because Mama Kalisk eats Tessa, nah. They gotta keep the climaxes coming like a teenage boy discovering his first Playboy. Mama Kalisk gets blown up from the inside by one of those stupid ice grenades, like right after she snooze with like its child and Derek, and that kills it. The unkillable monster that Derek set out to kill is killed by a female robot with an ice grenade. They really couldn't give this poor misshapen Fuggo a legitimate kill to like boost his T levels, and just like to make the entire scene worse, they not only then take Tessa's death away from Derek, but they give it to Predator Grogu as the butt of a joke after it lost its mother 5 minutes earlier.
Respect. I don't see no respect.
Remember how I just said that the climaxes keep coming? Well, they don't stop here, folks. We get a little bit of like a time skip, and Derek manages to somehow repair his ship and fly back to Yautja Prime to confront his father, Jimmy. Why? Because he's formed his own clan with a robot and a Grogu, so he's found who he is and his place. And that the only way now to cement that fully is to kill his father. Very reminiscent of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. But, you know, lacking the character development that made Star-Lord's plight significantly more interesting in that movie. The film has been pretty clear at regularly reinforcing that Derek is a malformed Yautja. That's why he looks so unthreatening and small. His own father attributes these physical factors to him being a disgrace to their clan. Yet, when Derek returns to face off with his father's Yautja henchmen are the same size as Derek. Dan undoes his own lore retcon, just like he did with that stupid flintlock pistol twice. First in Prey, then again in Killer of Killers. So it turns out that Derek's dad just hates him, which at this point I can fully empathize with. Father Jimmy faces off against Derek, and since Derek has still yet to get his own kill, he has got to use his ship's engines to blow dust to help him fight his father while he's cloaked. There's quite a few problems with this scene that just contradict Dan's own writing alone, not the rest of the lore. The biggest being that Father Jimmy doesn't fight with the same honor he expects of his sons, using the cloak to his advantage despite being a fearsome warrior. If you're going to give the hero of your film yet another hurdle to overcome to complete his arc, then that hurdle should probably mirror your villain a little more, no? Just as the Predator is stripped down to take on Dutch, a worthy adversary, should a father who admits that the right son live want to fight that same warrior on the same grounds in front of his entire clan who are watching in the background like a crowd at a baseball game? The entire scene just feels tacked on, like a forced resolution because that's how the movie started, and they absolutely needed to resolve that plot line. And yet again, Derek can't get his own kill, as just as it seems like he's about to spear his own father through the head, Predator Grogu, now 10 times larger, comes up behind him and eats Jimmy's head. Just when you think this Sharkfest is over, Dan's gotta do what Dan does best. Create an ending that leaves enough room for a sequel. And how does he do that, you ask? By showing a ship approaching on the horizon. A ship with Derek's mother in it. Meaning that this clan is a matriarchy, not a patriarchy, which the entire film leading up to this kind of implied it was a patriarchy. So what's going on? I suppose with that, Rule 34 can also add Yautja mommy milkers to the list of fappable material this film will spawn. I never really understood why the Star Wars fanbase was so upset about the state of Star Wars under Disney. I'd heard about all the feminization issues and retcons, but never cared to understand them because I think Star Wars is dumb. But seeing Dan Tractenberg leave his menstrual snail trail across the Predator franchise has really opened my eyes. And I can finally empathize with you Star Wars nerds. I can't deny Prey has some good ideas at its core. Even Killer of Killers has 3 good ideas buried in it. But that's all Dan has, ideas. And what's worse is that they're all ideas lacking substance, coherence, and a fundamental understanding of the franchise they're for. And Predator Badlands just continues that trend, bastardizing the macho and hyper-masculine for the sake of feminizing a franchise that women generally never liked anyways. And that's not to say female characters can't work well within the Predator universe, it's just that the ones that we have aren't ones that resonate with anyone. Ursa is a grandmother so hell-bent on revenge that she isn't even a competent mother. Neru is so desperate to have her own male coming-of-age ritual that she ends up killing another dude for it and embarks on a journey that both downplays the legacy of the Comanche and straight up ignores the societal structures within most indigenous tribes of that time. And Thia is a robot! And not even a very interesting one considering her personality is a very poor amalgamation of several Disney princesses. Disney princesses who were all individually memorable because they had their own heroine's journey, which Thia has none of. And every single idea that Dan has comes from legitimately one single moment in the Predator franchise. The ship sequence in Predator 2. He retconned the background for the flintlock in Prey, then retconned that same flintlock again in Killer of Killers, then alludes that Derek's family may be of the same lineage as the Yautja in Predator 2 by laying out the wall of trophies even down to the Independence Day reference exactly the same. And if that's the case, then there's a huge continuity issue, as that means that despite showing respect and honor to Harrigan back then, those Yautja in Predator 2 are still dishonorable. I'm just genuinely at a loss at why we continue praising what Dan Trachtenberg is doing to this franchise. There aren't that many constraints with what you can do creatively, yet he continues to limit himself and be completely ignorant of the damage he does, instead justifying it as something revolutionary for this cinematic universe.
So it's he's a teenage predator essentially, isn't he, Dan?
Yeah.
So what sort of work went into imagining actors who've never seen one before?
I really just drawing inspiration, not just from the movies, but also from like the Dark Horse comic books and a lot of ancillary material in terms of what the culture would want to feel like. I always, for whatever reason, felt like there was some Frank Frazetta-ness to them, some Conan in their culture, some pirate nature in their culture. I never saw them as the most civilized, nomadic, you know, and then just started thinking about what someone with a chip on their shoulder would feel like, and was something to prove, and all that teenageriness that comes from that's universal, you know. So yeah.
Predator allowed us to explore the human story from a new perspective, using a more subtle form of cosmic horror to challenge the buried fears within ourselves. Unmasking that horror and making it a hero is functionally antithetical to what Predator has always been about, and what's made the franchise so alluring to so many for almost 40 years. And now Alien has been dragged into whatever this Tumblr shite fest is. There's honestly nothing redeeming about Predator Badlands. I can understand if you enjoyed this movie. I enjoy plenty of bad movies myself. But if you think this film is good by legitimately any standard or metric, you must have an IQ below room temperature. A formulaic plot structure that takes from Marvel, Star Wars, Pocahontas, and bits and pieces of other IPs like Terminator, Frozen, and Monster Hunter to form a film that abandons everything we not only love about Predator, but what we love about cinema. Anyways, until next time, stay frosty, friends. Oh, and fuck you, Dan Trachtenberg, you fat.